A new scientific study has been released by sciencemag.org, which looks at the effect of the magnetic field on the navigation of dogs. This is very interesting considering the conversation that we've been having about the solar effects on human consciousness, changes in the Earth's magnetic field, and other factors. Going to the article now, dogs are renowned for their world-class noses, but a new study suggests that they may have an additional, albeit hidden, sensory talent, a magnetic compass. The sense appears to allow them to use Earth's magnetic field to calculate shortcuts in unfamiliar terrain. The findings is a first in dogs, says Catherine Lohman, a biologist at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who studies magnetoreception and navigation in turtles. She notes that dogs' navigational abilities have been studied, much less compared with migratory animals such as birds. It's an insight into how dogs build up their picture of space, adds Richard Holland, a biologist at Bangor University who studies bird navigation. And I'll pause there for a minute. Magnetoreception. First time I used that term was last year when that study came out from Caltech that human brainwave states have been detected, have been documented to perceive changes in the magnetic field in an environment, and they did it in a controlled lab. There's also the discovery of magnetite, not only in migratory animals, but in the human brain as well. So in more ways than one, we're affected by these changes. There were already hints that dogs, like many animals, and maybe even humans, can perceive Earth's magnetic field. In 2013, Heineck Berta, a sensory ecologist at the Czech University of Life Sciences Prague, who has worked on magnetic reception for 3 decades, and colleagues showed dogs tend to orient themselves north-south while urinating or defecating. Because this behavior is involved in marking and recognizing territory, Berta reasoned the alignment helps dogs figure out the location relative to other spots. But stationary alignment isn't the same thing as navigation. In the new study, Berta's graduate student, Katrina, initially put video cameras and GPS trackers on 4 dogs and took them on trips into the forest. Probably the time for an appropriate comment on how potential intelligences beyond our own may be observing us and our behaviors. Going back to the article, the dogs would scamper off to chase the scent of an animal for 400 meters on average. And I apologize for not having this translated into feet or mileage. The GPS tracks showed 2 types of behavior during their return trips to their owner. And you could see the map for this, the link that I will have provided down below. In one, dubbed tracking, a dog would retrace its original route, presumably following the same scent. In the other behavior called scouting, the dog would return along a completely new route, bushwhacking without any backtracking. When Katrina showed the data to Berta, her PhD advisor, he noticed a curious feature. In the middle of a scouting run, the dog would stop and run for about 20 meters along a north-south axis. They have a video included in this article as well, before it began to navigate back. Those short runs looked like an alignment along the magnetic field, but Katrina didn't have enough data to be sure. So she and Berta scaled up the project, setting loose 27 dogs on several hundred trips over 3 years. Colleagues in the Department of Game Management and Wildlife Biology, where almost everyone has a hunting dog, pitched in. The researchers took a close look at 223 scouting run cases in which dogs roamed an average of 1.1 kilometers on their return. In 170 of these trips, the dogs stopped before they turned back and ran for about 20 meters along a north-south axis. When the animals did this, they tended to get back to the owner via a more direct route than when they didn't, the authors report in eLife. I'm really quite impressed with the data, Lohman says. During the walks in the forest, the team tried to avoid giving the dog other navigational clues. Whenever possible, a dog was taken to a part of a forest it had never been to so that it couldn't rely on familiar landmarks. A dog also couldn't navigate back by looking for its owner, who hid after the dog first headed off to roam. Scent didn't seem to play a role either, because the wind was rarely blowing from the owner towards the dog when it was coming back. Berta thinks the dogs run along a north-south axis to figure out where they are. It's the most plausible explanation, he says. Lohman says the implication is that dogs can remember their previous heading and use reference to the magnetic compass to figure out the most direct route home. I'm intrigued, she says. Adam Michelossi, who specializes in dog behavior at Itova's Lowland University, says designing magnetoreception experiments is complicated because it's hard to make an animal rely only on that sense. The problem is that in order to 100% prove the magnetic sense or any other sense, you have to exclude the others. And I'll butt in and say that's an opinion. It may be really a combination of the senses merging as one. Berta and Katrina are taking a different approach. In one experiment, they will put magnets on the dog's collars to disturb the local magnetic field and see whether it hinders their ability to navigate. The idea harkens back to a controversial experiment published in 1980 in Science, in which magnets stuck in blindfolds seem to disrupt an intuitive magnetic homing sense in humans. Michelossi says it would not be surprising to find that dogs can use the magnetic field to navigate, and it seems to be an ancient ability, and it might be present in any mammal that travels through large territories. Lohman agrees. Quote, "You would expect this to be something that a lot of animals can do to return to home after hunting," she says, "and it's neat to see it in a dog." This channel will continue to focus on updates like this. Over at Patreon, I get into other things, sometimes read a little bit of science fiction. I plan to read something from Philip K. Dick in the very near future called The Defenders. If you'd like to join that and support channels like this, you can visit patreon.com/theoutside the box. I'm Alex Ansary for July 18th, 2020.